Jan Aril from Basefarm, som är Chief Evangelist på Basefarm. Han ska berätta om fortsättningsresan på det som Sara från Basefarm inledde med den stora scenen. Nämligen vi ska få ut potentialen ur den här datan som alla pratar om. Välkommen på scenen.
Tack. Okay, thank you. So I'm Jan Aril. I'll do it in English instead of Svorsk. Jan Aril, I work for Basefarm and Orange Business Services. And in my day job, I try to go to customers and help them to tackle their digital transformation. And sometimes it means help them to foster the DevOps culture. Other times it's about security as part of the development process. And today we're going to be talking about big data. Because big data is on everyone's lips, but we're having a lot of challenges to actually get the benefits. So we're going to be talking about what success could look like when you succeed with big data, because it's been done. What does it look like so we can recognize it? We're still trying to crack the code as an industry, and we're going to learn from that what we should not do. Then we're going to be talking about seagulls, which is very interested in big data. And we're going to give away some of our best practices for how we can succeed quick with big data and not after 18 months. So what does success look like? And when you work with data, success it pretty much looks like a virus outbreak. And there's definitely something going on here. Now what you see here on the left side is the city of New York and it's the city of Amsterdam. And it's not being overtaken by zombies. It's actually a very successful business we're seeing here, which is taking over the city. And this is happening all over the world, and it's a well-used example, which is Airbnb, which started in 2011 and in 2019 grew to become the second largest lodging provider in the world in revenue. And they're beating Marriott without owning any rooms. It's pure data. And not only that, they have 5 times more rooms than the second best. 5 times more rooms than Marriott. And who would believe that when they started in 2011, made their first minimal viable product, roll it out with the minimum features, and boom. But they were not the first, actually. So they're purely based on data. Now, the thing with, if you're going to be successful in the market, it's not just enough to have the great idea, because you have to have the capability to make it into industrialization and to operate it. So what Airbnb did, they made a MVP, a minimum viable product, which was usable and functionable. You felt good going to the site. It was not just a genius business concept with data connecting people. It was pretty usable. And then the most important part is that they worked through governance and compliance. So they could pick the credit card from you as the consumers, and you could pay to Airbnb, and it felt safe and secure. And the competition back then, they didn't have all this. They had the ID, but they didn't have the looks, they didn't have the governance, they didn't have the trust. And then they put a very genius social model around this, where you as a buyer can interact directly with the host of the room. So you feel it's an immediate contact with who is delivering the service. And we do trust Airbnb. They're very successful. So point here is it's not enough just to have a great idea. You have to have the capability to operationalize it. And that's what we're going to be talking about a bit later. How do you actually do that? Because there are a lot of ideas, but we are finding it hard to get the value from it. And this is not the only example. There are other companies. Netflix was laughed out of the boardroom of Blockbuster. They tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster said, this is not going to work. And we all know what happened. But everything is not about disruption. You can use big data and your current data to save magnificent amount of money on licensing on your data warehouse with very specific use case. Why aren't we doing that? You can use it to optimize your supply chain. You can use it for better decision support. You can give it to your business executive in order to do better forecasting. You can even give it to your first line to have better customer experience. There's a lot of very specific use cases for big data. You can do fraud detection. So executives do agree that if you don't do anything about big data, if you don't embrace this, 80% says, if we don't, we're going to be disrupted, we're going to be out of business, or we're not going to be as successful as we should be. Which is amazing because the opportunity is there, right? For us IT people, this means you have directly funding from top management if you have a good idea. So we are hearing ideas and rumors that data scientists, they are the key to big data, and we're trying to find them, and a lot of companies, they hire them. And I do remember when we hired our first data scientist, he came with this map, which made by someone else that is also a data scientist. And this is a friend of mine, and he said, you know, Jan Aril, I'm really proud because this is all the things I have to know in order to become a data scientist. And he has a PhD in applied physics, and he's a genius. Now, what's happening in the industry is that we are trying to hire these data scientists, and we give them the big data responsibility. And if you give a guy that knows all this, how do you take that idea and put it into your current business model? It's pretty hard. So 90% of all the projects that are data scientist projects, they fail. They never go production. And there's not a lot of DeLoreans on the street. Doc Brown, he could really operate the DeLorean. Marty had a bit of problems, and it's still not industrialized. And when you're going to do AI, the current situation is that 80% of AI projects, they reside on Doc Browns and Blackmagic. So Gartner says, sorry, Radar, more than 60% fails. I've seen numbers up to 85%. We're failing a lot with big data. It's not that we're not investing money in it, it's just that we're not getting the outcome. So there's a lot of reasons for that. Some people hire data scientists and they will go like, you know, your network people, security people, they won't give me access to the data. I can't do anything in this company. Or we struggle with data quality, or we haven't even tackled DevOps yet. We can't even use the services from the hyperscalers. There's a lot of different reasons why it fails. However, for those of you who succeed, you're going to be much more likely to acquire new customers. Not only that, but you're also keeping your customers. Now, the reason for that is that if you start working with data and you're forgetting about the applications, you only work with your data, you're going to understand your customers much better. And because you understand them, you can offer them services that they find relevant. And you're also going to keep them because the competition is not there yet. And of course, you're going to be a bit more profitable, which is good. So let's take a look at one example that we did. Now, we're trying to make this shift to sustainable energy. And as any transformation, it costs us a lot of money. It's really hard, and we have a lot of discussions. We tend to put these guys in very remote places, right? We put them in outposts, not necessarily near the cities, because we don't like them, we don't like the view, yet we want clean energy. When these guys break down, it's quite costly to fix them because you have to send ships. So the supply chain is pretty costly. So we work with a company called SKF, and we wanted to try to predict when do they break down so we could lower the cost on the supply chain quite significantly. And they had put a lot of sensors in place, and they gave us the data, and we went with our data scientists, and it failed completely. We couldn't predict anything. Now, the thing is, when you're going to work with big data, when you work with a data warehouse, you put data that you think is useful in a data warehouse because you have license costs, right? You don't want to put too much there, or else you have to cluster it, you have to pay more money. It's a different thing. When you're working with big data, you should gather as much as data as possible to support your use case, okay? Which is quite different. You do anything. You take all the data that you think could be relevant or not relevant. And in this example, there was a lot of data outside these windmills. There's a lot of things going on out here. And when you do have seagulls dancing tango on the top of the windmills and eating fish, and you take that for mechanical sounds, well, then you're getting the decision wrong. So we gather a bit more data outside the box, not just inside the box. And we could now predict the failure within 2 weeks. And they saved a lot of money on ship routing because they could make the whole supply chain ready within 2 weeks. Massive costs. So very simple example on how you can optimize your current business. You don't necessarily have to be Netflix or Airbnb. So what's the key? How do you succeed with this? Where do you start? Because we hear a lot about data lakes. Now, the number one thing that you most likely should do is to have a strong vision. Now, if you live off selling tickets today, you sell tickets with a markup on top. If you're going to live off travel experience, well, that means you're selling tickets with loss in this business model. It's a very different business model. Airbnb, they still don't own any rooms. So the strong vision, it's going to help you to articulate what you try to do. And you should have to stay true to that. If you do that, you're most likely going to have a bigger chance of succeeding. And it's not a tech upgrade, even though in my company we love technology, right? Many companies have started with the Hadoop cluster without having any vision, and they end up burning a lot of money. Or the 6-step guide to implementing a data lake. Very good way of spending a lot of money and failing, be part of those 60% or 85%. Have the vision, and then can you move on to this later. Pick one business challenge to solve, not all of it. Pick one. Are you trying to optimize your supply chain? Are you trying to save fuel costs? Are you trying to be more sustainable? Pick one business challenge. Or one of the favorites, customer intimacy. And what you're going to find once you work on customer intimacy, it can be quite intrusive, right? Meaning, if you can get the color of the lady's tongue in this example, maybe you should get it, if you can. Could be relevant. Could be. And then, if you're breaking compliance, well, fail fast, iterate, try again, and adjust. But gather all the data you can. When you have picked your business challenge, don't give it to the data scientist alone. Pick a cross-functional team with the business involved, preferably all the way up to the top management funding. You need an operational guy, you need a developer guy, you need the data scientists, you need a cross-functional innovation team to roll out the first minimal viable product. Netflix didn't do this with only one developer. They had a cross-functional team. So you're going to be setting out to make a minimum viable product, which is the first thing you do. It has to be useful. It has to look okay. It has to be practical. And the key feature here is really having the core functions well implemented. It needs to be compliant to your future business model or your current business model. You need to have those minimum set of requirements, just like any other success that you've seen. And you can still do pilots and proof of concepts and prototypes. They're just part of the journey. It's just that they're different than an MVP. What you're going to find once you start working with big data is that you're going to most likely struggle to find all the competencies inside your own ecosystems. Which is why at Orange, the 4,000 people, we need to work with partners. Even amongst our 24,000 people, we still feel that we have to work with others because there's so much out there. So tap into the ecosystems. Try to find the talents that you need to staff the cross-functional team. You will need toolkits, you will platforms. You will need access to technology, and you can tap into learnings, insights that other has learned before you, because there are several people doing this already. And you can map some services. So when you have done your first MVP, and you built the bridge, and then you're adding more data sources because you're going to continue to build this model, you have to scale and operate it. You have to operate your data pipeline. Possibly you have to connect a different operating model, because as a successful company, maybe for 10 years or 20 years, you're still selling tickets. You're still earning money on that, and you're going to be doing that for another 10 years or 5 years. Now, if you're going to succeed with your new business model, it needs to be a different operating model. It's different recruiting. It's different KPIs. It's different way of working with customers. Different recruiting process. Different culture. and make that come together on the top. So to stay competitive, you have to stay on the wave, but you have to work on the user experience. So continue to iterate on that, or end up like Airbnb that is now being overtaken by home2go.com because they have a better search engine optimization and users can find it more easier in some markets. It's just about the user experience. So they're actually being overtaken. So even the disruptor, if he comes disrupted, so now Uber is the world's second largest bank. I think it was announced 2 weeks ago. One of the largest B2B banks in the world, just like that. And that's what you can do with data. So when you leave Radar, you get back to the office. Where do you start? How can you start? Are you setting out to do the new Airbnb, or what are you doing? Well, first of all, you could find something that really annoys you inside the organization. It could be anything. It could be time management. Do we have to spend 70% of our time in meetings that we feel maybe wasn't that useful? Could we do something about that? What else can we do with data? I'm sure there must be something that is annoying you. And you could try to fix that. Or you could pick the elephant in the room. Churn is often an elephant in the room. It can be market penetration. It can be a lot of things. Are you being disrupted by someone? Do you think you are becoming disrupted by anyone? And try to fix that. And try to set out on the data journey to see if you can solve it. And the thing is, in a lot of companies, we think that customers, they're jumping into their certain death. And they're really not. They're just jumping into someone else's fishbowl. They always do. They usually do. And there are ways of retaining those customers. So either you can work with data to optimize your current model, or you can be building that new fishbowl. And they will be jumping to that fishbowl, and you'll be disrupting yourself, but you'll still keep the clients, possibly in a better revenue model, because as we've seen, you're earning more money, you're more profitable. And there is possible to actually train a neural network to avoid customer churn. It's the pretty figure to the left here. It's supposed to be a neural network, and you can do that. It's possible. Because what if you could get down inside your customer's brain? When my wife was pregnant, I had to get inside her brain before I left work because I wanted to see how the situation was. So she has a Fitbit, and I have her app. So I saw how her pulse has been all day. It was very useful because then I knew when to leave work to see how the day they had been. So there's a lot of data out there that you can use to understand the customer. You can actually understand where they are because the sellers, they have GPS. There are companies using that for tracking their consumers. There's a lot of digital traces all over the internet. You can use that to understand the customer better. You can understand what they did yesterday or even predict what they're about to do. The fact is, there's a new generation coming into the market, Generation Alpha, which are children of millennials, usually. And they don't have the same barriers that we have, or my generation. We're still in silos. And they are all over social media, and we're not talking Facebook. It's a very different social media. For them, data it's natural. It's a natural thing to do. So we could choose to do something greater good for the new generation. And we could choose do we want to adopt our services to fit the next generation coming into the market? Or do we want to build the next fishbowl so we can continue to keep our customers? That's it for me. If you're interested to talk more with us, we're represented downstairs. So thank you.
Tack så mycket, Jan Aril och Basefarm.